why don't we dig in a bit here? What do you think? Thanks everyone for being here. I'm really excited to have you get to know Shawn and we can chat a bit. Shawn and I met at the ConvertKit, which is the email service that I use to send out all the emails that you get. The ConvertKit conference 3 years ago now, back when conferences were still a thing and all that good stuff. And Shawn is a great dude and a good friend, and he is in a similar space where he's doing a lot of work around like productivity tools and different things that are all about living well and using tools that help you do that. Former creative director turned entrepreneur, and I'm sure we're going to learn a little bit more about that journey and that path. But Shawn, thanks for being here and thanks for hanging out with us today.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's an honor to get to connect with you guys. This is fun.
So I'd love to just kind of, if you don't mind, starting out a little bit about your time as a creative director and how that transitioned into entrepreneurship and having employees and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. This is, I like this as a little bit more smaller, more intimate group. So I'll share a little bit more the personal side as opposed to like the high level for, random podcast person. Let's see. I'm originally from Denver and I moved to Kansas City about 20 years ago as an intern for a church out here. And over time at that church, I took over as their marketing and creative director. And I was doing that for quite a while. And in the midst of that, I got married. My wife was in college when I first moved out here. So we dated long distance for a little bit. And then we got married. And I'm big now. All right. So there's my face. So I'm doing the marketing and the creative work and leading an in-house team for this ministry. And the team that I led was about 25 people. And we just handled everything that was related at all to anything you would think of: communication, marketing, messaging, things like that. So we ran about 24 conferences a year. So we did the branding and the marketing, the promotion for all of those. One of which was a really huge event at the end of the year that would usually draw about 25,000 people to it. So all of that plus a Bible school university, just a bunch of stuff. And so we did all the website, all the email marketing, all the print publication, like just everything for everything. And it was a lot of work. And I was working, on a good work a week, maybe 60 hours would be like, that was a slow week for me. Usually it's 75 to 80 hours a week, which is, basically 10 hours a day, every single day. So it was a lot. And we didn't have any kids at the time, so that worked out okay. And we had, a couple date nights a week. So I was still getting a lot of quality time and really good friends with the people I was working with, but it was quite a bit and just a very urgent office culture. There's this story that I like to tell. Actually, we just came out of this email course and I tell this story in this course. There was this one time where, I'm checking my email. And in there's this email that says, hey, we're having, it was from one of my bosses. And he goes, hey, we're having a very important meeting to discuss some new decisions that we're going to be making. So-and-so's in town. And so we want to like jump in with this opportunity. If you can come to the meeting, it'd be great if you could be there. We're making some decisions. It's in 5 minutes from now. And I got the email like an hour after the meeting was over and all this stuff had happened that I wasn't privy to. And I just remember feeling like, A, like that is just not a healthy work environment. And B, just the massive amount of just poor communication and then the urgency that conveyed of just, you should be checking your email all the time and whatever. So I tried to develop some healthier work habits for myself to make sure that I was able to get some of the important work done that I actually needed to do and not just constantly get sucked into kind of like the emotionally driven, urgency-centric leadership stuff that would sometimes come to play. So anyways, I'm doing that 70, 80 hours a week. And then my wife and I end up getting pregnant with our first pregnancy. And I just liken it to this scene in The Matrix when like Neo's on the rooftop getting those bullets shot at him. I don't know if you guys have seen that. And it's like the first time that you see like time start to slow down for him, and like this stuff's just flying by, and he's just like watching it kind of in slow-mo go past him. And there was like a 2-week period after my wife and I, after she told me we were having a baby, that's kind of like what everything felt like to me all of a sudden. Was I was in this environment that was so fast paced and so urgent, and just everything happening so quickly. And suddenly I was just like, I was in this little peaceful, slow bubble, and I'm just seeing this stuff fly by. I'm like, none of this matters to me anymore. And just the kind of the perspective shift that came from realizing, I was going to be a dad, we were going to have kids. So it really kind of made me like get a different picture and perspective of what I was doing with my time. And so that, and then about a month later, we ended up miscarrying the baby. And so that was a huge, 2 huge things back to back, within a very short period of time to go through. And it was right around Christmas, 2010 that this happened. And I remember just at home, my wife and I were just having dinner, like a few days later, as she was kind of in recovery from the trauma and everything. And we were just having dinner together. And this was actually at the same time that this massive conference that I used to help promote and put on. So there's 25,000 people, and my team it's all hands on deck, and there's so much. We got all the social media we're managing for the PR, and just there's a lot that happens. And I just had to completely bow out of all of it and pass it off to my assistant director. And I'm at home with my wife, and we're having dinner and just kind of talking and realizing this is not what I want to do long-term anymore. I'm kind of done here. And just the perspective that all of that brought. So I was like, I would actually like to be a blogger. I would like to write blog posts for a living. And I had a website on the side. It was called ShawnBlanc.net, and I kind of been doing it as a hobby for a little while. And it was making about $1,000 a month through some advertising that I hosted on the site, and I would do some sponsorships. And I thought, well, I'm doing this on the side while also working this massively demanding job. It's like, I bet if I quit my job, I would get 80 hours of my life back. I bet I could take my $1,000 a month that I'm making, and if I focus on it, I bet I could get it to, 4,000 or 5,000, and that would be enough to live on. And my wife was super supportive, and she's like, you should do it. You should go for it. So that was kind of the big turning point for us. In January, I handed in my resignation. And in February on my blog, I announced that I would be taking my website full time. And I asked people to support me. And this was back before Patreon existed. And it was just like PayPal. I was like, you can send me money through PayPal. Like that was it. Like you couldn't do Stripe recurring payments or memberships. Memberful didn't exist. Like none of that was there back in February 2011. So I just had people could sign up through PayPal, and then I would get an email notification from PayPal saying, hey, this person has sent you a recurring subscription thing they signed up for. Then I would have to take their email address and then send them like the private URL for, I was doing this podcast. It was called Shawn Today. And that was the perk. You got to listen to this podcast. And so I'd send them the RSS feed for the podcast. Like, thanks for signing up. Here, you can sign up and listen to the RSS feed now. And it was just, it's kind of crazy, but it was cool because I had no idea if that was going to work or not. Would people support me? I was going to charge $3 a month, which I felt like I felt like it's a huge imposter. Like, who would I be to ask people to support me directly so I could just write about productivity and creativity on, my tech blog? Like that just seems so obscure to me. And when I announced it on the blog, I had 400 people sign up in the first day, and just this huge outpouring of support. And it was amazing. And there were people that I have looked up to in the industry that I had no idea they were paying attention, and they were spreading the word on their own sites and on Twitter without me even asking them to. And it was super encouraging. So that was enough for me to be able to quit my job and go full time. And I had more people sign up, and I was able to start charging more for sponsorships. And pretty much within that first month, we were able to hit about 4,000 a month in revenue for the site, just kind of as an indie blogger, indie publisher, which is really cool. So it felt like the right thing at the right time. So I quit my job and started working for myself. And I had all these horrible work habits that like surprisingly came with me. I had no idea that years in this urgency centric office and in this space where I was constantly, I was used to working 10 to 14 hours a day as my norm, and sort of defining my success as that. And I don't know if anyone here is familiar with Enneagram, but I've got a bunch of friends that are into it. So I've read a couple of the books, and so I'm a 3. I'm like a 3-wing 3, basically. So I'm very driven by wanting to achieve and wanting to be successful. And for the previous 10 years at my past job, like the definition of success was basically amount of hours that you're there. Like, how much are you in the chair doing the work? That is sort of how successful you are, because that shows how committed you are. And it took me a really long time to break out of a different mindset and understanding of success that wasn't rooted in just constantly going harder and giving more and more time to my work, but actually realizing there are other things that matter, other things that are important, and allowing the space for them. So that was a multi-year journey. It took me probably 4 or 5 years to break some of those mindsets and those habits and things like that, and to begin to embrace, a lot of stuff that you guys talk about, with margin and the breathing room, and just like minimalism unto not just so that you have less stuff on your wall, but so that you actually have the breathing room and the space in your life to enjoy what you actually do have. And not just with things, but with time and with relationships and all of that stuff. So that's a little bit about my personal journey. I don't know, I could take a pause here and answer some questions before I jump in and talk about anything. I think you wanted me to mention some of the different sites and some of the projects that we do.
Yeah, it's interesting because I did not realize that it had all started. I saw, on the blog saying that you went full time with that blog, but because you have the other sites and stuff, I didn't actually realize that you went full, like you transitioned right into that blog, and that was in 2010 or 11 or so.
Yep. It was.
It's wild to think how many different things there are now around that model or that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. To see you doing that with PayPal too. I'm curious, like, so we know that the transition of work habits is a big like mindset thing. I think that comes with a lot of stuff with any kind of lifestyle change or any kind of work mentality, or just like what we believe of ourselves, maybe limiting beliefs in some ways, or how we find value in ourselves. Do you have a sense of like along the way what some of that transition looked like? Were there milestones along the process that you felt were significant in terms of, I need to take a day off every week, I need to take 2 days off every week? Were there kind of milestones like that you felt?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I remember at one point I had to force myself to take bank holidays off, because I would just work all the time, and I enjoyed my work. So it wasn't, it wasn't like I wasn't stressed, or I probably was. I just didn't recognize it. I enjoyed what I was doing, and it's like the writing. I loved it. I loved getting up early. I loved writing all day and just building that audience and recording the podcasts and hearing from listeners and dialoguing. So it was very enjoyable. And I think there is a time, especially when you're getting something off the ground, it does require a lot of energy, right? Like the rocket ship taking off, right? Like there's a ton of energy required to get it into orbit. And so some of that was like, there was that hustle required to sort of get my blog, get my job off the ground and get it going. But then also recognizing that it's not sustainable to work that much, that often. I didn't even give myself time off in between. I give myself one day. When I quit my old job, I quit it on March 31st, and that was a Thursday. And then April was Friday, and April 1st, I was like, well, I'm not going to start my new job on a Friday, especially if it's April 1st. So I'll wait till Monday. So I gave myself a 3-day weekend in between. And like, looking back, I'm like, I should have taken a month off. Like, come on. Like, what was I doing? Like, I had like just this huge amount of freedom, and I had all these false expectations of what I thought my readers were going to expect. And I had now had hundreds of people that were supporting me $3 a month. And I felt like I needed to show up for them. And I think that's important. And I don't want to diminish that at all, because like that does really matter. And you do want to show up for your audience. And that's how you build the relationships and build the long-term audience-based business. But at the same time, it took me a while to learn that taking breaks and taking rest is okay. And just being able to give up some of that control. So I remember starting by taking bank holidays. There was a time where I would do 4-day weekends or 3-day weekends. So 4-day work weeks, but, it wasn't super great. I didn't love that schedule. So, just because I was then working like 10 hours a day, and I felt like I was diminishing returns. So I think one of the biggest milestones was when I hired my first employee. And it's kind of skipping ahead a little bit, but there was one where I hired my first contractor, and then another where I had my first full-time employee. And just the that giving up control of like work that I was doing, and then saying, instead of like, here's something that I think can grow, here's something that I think would do well, and I think someone else can help get it across, in that journey and get it across that finish line. So those are two huge milestones. And then the third, which I think we're going to talk about today as well, was when we started doing sabbaticals. So at the beginning of 2017, my whole company, we started taking 1-week sabbaticals every 8 weeks. And I can explain this more, but basically we do 6 weeks of focused work, 1 week of buffer to kind of review and then plan for the next work cycle. And then we take 1 week off. So it's like 6 + 1 + 1. And we just repeat that over and over and over. Actually, today is the last day of our buffer week. And so I am going on a sabbatical starting tomorrow. And that has just been a huge breath of fresh air for me and for our team as well, of just building in like repetitive rest and downtime, but also building in that focused work time is really valuable. So
that's awesome. I love that that flow, that structure, that kind of model to do the 6 on, 1 buffer, 1 off. It seems like that would create a rhythm that worked really well with being able to think about things you needed to think about and get into stuff during that week that would just kind of happen organically, maybe. I wanted to mention too, anyone, I do want to kind of have this be open up in terms of, I don't want to just be asking all the questions. And so if you have questions, you can either drop them in the chat and I will ask them for you, or you can just say question and then I'd love to have you ask. So even right now, if anyone has a question specifically for Shawn, or just something to say, we'd love to hear it. Otherwise, we will keep rolling on. But yes, you are welcome to just jump in and ask questions, say hi.
Shawn, I'm curious about something, and maybe you'll get to it, but so you don't have to answer it now, but I'm curious about the evolution of your content and what you've decided to talk about. Cause it sounds like at the beginning you were like at this place, you had some realizations about like what your message was going to be, and you're sharing it with a podcast, as I understand it, and blogging. And then how did you navigate like from where you were then to where you are today? Was that like, did you see that path at the beginning? Were you in constant communication with your audience to figure out what kind of content they liked? Or has it been pretty much like you stuck with an idea the whole time? I'm curious about that.
That is a great question, and that is very hard to answer. So when I first started, so it's been almost 10 years now that I've just been working for myself, and now kind of building a team and running that team. But even before that, I was writing kind of as a side hobby, just because I enjoyed it. So I'd say I don't know, I've been blogging for maybe 15 years now. And the kind of the central main theme that sort of has always continued to interest me, that I've continued to write about, is around mostly like creativity and productivity. So how to be more creative more often. And then with Apple tech, so I'm a huge Apple nerd. I literally have like 3 keyboards on my desk right now. Just like realizing how not normal that is as I'm talking about it, like just. Okay. So anyways, so I'm a huge Apple nerd. So I like to talk about kind of technology and creativity. So that's something that's always interested me. I've written about that basically from the beginning. And it has definitely sort of morphed and evolved and looked at in different ways over different times. And as I've just grown as well as a business owner and entrepreneur wanting to help create jobs for other people, create opportunities for people, and build a sustainable business that doesn't require me to always have to be there every single day, but can grow and thrive with other people as part of it as well. So some of that stuff has just shifted. So basically in the beginning, it was the blog, and then I started the podcast as well as sort of the perk for members. And then in like November, I think, of 2011, around Thanksgiving-ish, so my wife and I ended up getting pregnant again. We now have 3 boys. And so, so we're around Thanksgiving, my wife was on bed rest for a little bit, she was like having some early contractions. And so like kind of took a break. And I built in the meantime, I kind of spent some time building out this website that I thought would be really cool. It's called Tools and Toys. And it was just like gear for guys and like paraphernalia and stuff like that. And that was just another opportunity for me to write about different stuff and things that I was interested in. And then, so did that. And then I had about 2 years later, we were pregnant with another kid, Giovanni, our second born. And just a little bit shortly after he was born, I ended up building another site. It's called The Sweet Setup. And that was an Apple like kind of tech review site where we would review iPhone apps and Mac apps and iPad apps. And so these were kind of still in that vein of sort of the, creativity space and kind of nerdy Apple gear and stuff like that. And then meanwhile, on my podcast, I started doing this series around productivity and some of the stuff that I had learned about setting goals and taking the vision and the values that you carry for your life and like what matters most to you. And then using that to help you inform what are the goals that you have for different areas of your life. And then taking that and then building, I call them lifestyle habits, but you could call them just habits or routines. But basically, what are the things that you kind of incorporate into your day-to-day life that move you forward towards like the bigger picture outcomes that you care about that are also ideally in alignment with your vision and your values. So I did this series on my podcast, and it was just to the members, so not a ton of people were listening to it, and just got a ton of response from people, and everyone was saying this is some of the best teaching on productivity I've ever heard, or I love this. I'm like, oh, like I've been writing about like Apple apps and kind of creative stuff for a long time, but I've never like written about productivity before. So I was like, well, maybe I should write about this stuff too. So I started a newsletter and decided I would kind of take that podcast and share it as newsletter articles, and then maybe compile each episode, transcribe it, turn it into an ebook. And this was like 2014 into 2015 that this was happening. And I had a friend, my friend, his name's Shawn Blanc, and he runs a website called Shawn West. And he had just come out with this online course about how to do hand lettering. And he was telling me about just, it had done really well. He made quite a bit of money from it. And then just the way that he was able to package the contents for like these lessons and these action items to help you like learn this stuff. And I was like, that would make so much sense for me with the productivity stuff, instead of it being an ebook that people could download on Kindle and maybe they would highlight it, maybe they would read it. I was like, the whole point of this isn't to necessarily learn something new, because I feel like a lot of the content wasn't necessarily new content. But if you could actually apply it to your life and sort of take action on it, I felt like that would be so much more powerful to people, and the success rate for people would be a lot higher. So it's like, what if I did it as a course? Then I wouldn't have to have, here's a chapter with like the action items at the end of the chapter. I could instead have a course that says, here's some action items at the beginning. And then if you care more about the theory, then, here's that. So I decided to turn this book into an online course instead. That turned into the Focus course. And so those are kind of like the big main projects that I've built over the years. And so kind of that central theme, Stephanie, can I answer your question? That central theme has remained around the creativity stuff and the intentional being productive, but not just like being super fast. And I mean, I'm preaching to the choir here. You guys all get this. But like knowing what matters to you and then making the space to do that and creating habits and routines that support that. Because I am just a super lazy person. And if I don't have some sort of routine that keeps me on track for doing my writing on a regular basis and doing my workouts on a regular basis. And I love the idea of routinizing. Even with my wife, we have a date night like every Thursday night for us for the last, 18 years that we've been dating and been married. We've had a date night pretty much every Thursday for 18 years. And that's just part of our routine. But it means that every week there's an opportunity for us to connect and to check in with each other and to spend quality time. And it's like, that matters so much. And that kind of thing for every area of my life, for my health and for my creative work and even for finances, right? It's like, you should have some sort of automation in place. And so that's been really like exploring those different things and just kind of finding different fringes and different expressions and different opportunities to write about this stuff and to share about it. And then also like learning about different business models over the years, from reader and listener supported stuff to advertising and sponsorships and affiliates to now our primary revenue stream is doing online courses. But even that whole landscape is beginning to shift and change. And so, we'll see what's next for us. But I think at the end of the day, when you've got something that you're interested in that you can talk passionately about, and you'll always find people that are willing to read and track with your stuff. So
thanks for that question.
Thank you.
So I'm curious in terms of, so you mentioned a couple of things going along with the routine, things like that, and habits, and that's a nice segue into one of the things I'm curious about is, so you've had the date night, right? The weekly on Thursdays, things like that. I'm curious how you handle or what you might do if this happens. I assume you're human. And so, how do you handle times when the routine falls off or you experience resistance in some way? And I'm curious what that's been like for you in your work and how you've like faced those challenges in different ways.
Yeah, that's great. I don't have like a singular approach for that. So two things that kind of help me. One is I usually will talk to somebody about it. If I recognize that like I'm just feeling frustrated in an area or feel like I'm not gaining traction, just for me as a verbal processor and as an extrovert, I've learned that sometimes I'm too much in my head, and it just, for me, if I'm in my head, it all just gets foggy and fuzzy, and I need to spit it out. So through journaling or writing in my Day One app, as well as just talking to friends, I started hosting a mastermind retreat, which we didn't have it this year. And I'm actually feeling some of the pangs of that, of missing some time with these people where we can talk about this stuff and flesh it out. Because usually it's as simple as just like, oh, here's this one little thing that's in your way. So times when the routine is struggling or it's difficult to follow through is just realizing why. And so a lot of times I find the why by talking to other people or just analyzing it myself, writing about how I'm feeling or whatever it is. And for example, just as a business owner, and every year I kind of reevaluate, like, where are we at with the budget? What are we going to look for next year? Kind of what are some of the financial goals? And I run this really, really funky envelope system for my business with the way we do it. Not literal cash envelopes, that'd be bizarre, but like savings account envelopes basically. And If you guys are familiar with Mike Michalowicz and Profit First, it's kind of based on that. But so every year I kind of look at those envelopes and make sure that the percentages are correct. And it took me like 3 years before I realized that right in between December, or right in between Thanksgiving and Christmas, for me, like kind of beginning of December month, I was always really, really stressed about money. And it took me 3 years before I realized that was cyclical. Like each time I just felt like, man, I'm really stressed about money right now. And then like a year later, I'm like, man, I'm just really stressed about money right now. And then like a year later, and finally, day one introduced to this thing where you'll open it up and they'll say, hey, like on this day, here's some stuff you wrote. It's like, just like a year ago, I'm looking and it goes, hey, on this day you wrote about this. And I like tap into the entry and it was literally like the exact same feelings I was having that day. I'd written about it a year earlier, like the exact same thing. I'm like, oh, this is cyclical. This is normal. Like for some reason, the cycle of my business and the cycle of how we are. So understanding the why can help quite a bit for me to overcome those obstacles. And then the other thing, sometimes when I just feel stuck with stuff, is to just change it up. So either like if I'm having trouble writing on a consistent basis, maybe finding a new place to write or a new time of day to write and just, change it up. And that sort of newness or freshness can often just breathe a little bit of life and then help enough to kind of get the momentum back and going. Or just changing up by literally going like, I'm done. I can't be any more productive on this today, or I can't do this today. So I'm going to do something else entirely and just completely either have like just quit for the day and go like play catch with my kids, or go out with a friend, which doesn't happen quite as often as it used to, just due to the current state of everything. But so that kind of thing, I think just giving myself permission to try something different. So
that's great. We got 2 questions in the chat, which I'm going to kind of maybe combine and or do out of order. But so Bridget is asking, do you do a digital detox during your week-long sabbatical? And Jennifer's asking if you like do that sabbatical in your personal life as well, like if that's sort of like a combined thing. And so I'm curious if like during those breaks, what does your tech usage look like? And then I'm also curious to tack onto that, like what is your day-to-day tech use? Like how do you, if you're super into tech, like how is that integrated in your life day to day, in addition to just like how you use it? What do you use to keep that at bay maybe, or what?
Yeah, that's great. So with the company, so everyone takes the week off as a whole team. So there's no internal communication going on with stuff. And then our head of customer support has a few kind of safety measures in place to make sure that like if one of the websites goes down or if there's an emergency or something like that, like we would be notified of it. But so otherwise I don't check email. I don't check in our project management software or anything like that. And I also, for the most part, stay off of social media and just sort of do, like we're just asking like the digital detox. So I do kind of just unplug from that stuff. And then I do still usually like to write. I kind of keep a similar schedule, so to speak, of, I don't just sleep in super late. I still try to get up early and then have that kind of personal time in the morning, which for me has been time to write. And so I'll usually keep that and still continue to write because I enjoy that and it gives me that creative output, and I enjoy doing that. But I'm not trying to, I'm not writing for anything that has a deadline. I'm not doing work writing. I'm just doing enjoyment writing about things that I'm interested in still. So I'll usually keep that, and then I have like the days free to do whatever I want. And I try not to plan anything or schedule anything and allow it to just be kind of open. I'll still do a workout every day. And then usually I'll try to have, I like to pick like a project around the house or something that I can still put my hands to that I feel like I'm making progress. If I just do nothing, I kind of feel like I start to feel lazy and gross. And so I still want to have some sort of activity that I'm doing, but something that I'm enjoying and looking forward to doing. I've got an old Jeep CJ7. So I'll sometimes work in the garage, work on that, or just whatever, something to enjoy my time. And then I spend a lot more time with my kids, a lot more time with my wife. I'll kind of take over some of the parenting responsibilities as well. My wife's a full-time stay-at-home mom. And so I'll be in charge of taking the kids to school and picking them up, or different things like that to give her a little bit of extra time as well. So there's not anything like in particular. And then as far as if it's just business or personal for me, because like I'm off of work and I have zero work responsibilities, that allows it to be a personal sabbatical for me as well, to just rest and kind of decompress and, time to just think for uninterrupted about nothing. And then usually ideas just come from that.
It's incredible how that goes, right? I always think about the story of the Apple campaign where it's like the I'm a Mac and I'm a PC, those two people. And apparently that agency had been pitching ideas to Steve Jobs for like a year, and him just brutally bashing down every single idea that they came up with. And they were working around the clock to do something good. And then they gave up basically and went surfing and came up with the idea for that ad and came back with it. And it was like, go. And so
that's awesome.
I always kind of think about, I think there is that element of like putting in the work and getting the data in your brain and doing that. But often we need to kind of, even I've seen this in my own life too, when we need to let go a little bit to let our brains actually do what it needs to do. We can't have it turned on all the time. To make it work. Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes, please.
I'm just curious if you have a morning routine or like an end of day routine or both. I'm sort of in the process of kind of like adjusting mine a bit. But I feel like the more that I'm consistent with doing the things that I like to do in the morning, and then also like I track a few things and like I do like a little summary of like what the day was like in my day one app, as well at the end of the day. Like I don't always remember to do it. So I'm trying to be better about kind of remembering the things that matter to me and to do them. So I was just curious if you have anything like that.
Yeah, that's a great question. I do. I have both a morning routine as well as a kind of end of day routine. So for me, my end of day routine is like end of work routine. So it actually starts with that. It starts with the end of day routine. And so what I will do is around 4:00 when I'm kind of wrapping up with my day before I work. I'm in my basement right now, so I got everybody's upstairs. So when I'm wrapping up down here before going upstairs to join my family and hang out for the evening, what I'll do is I'll plan my most important tasks for tomorrow. And so I'll say, okay, 1, 2, or 3, whatever needs to be done. And then I also write out my schedule for tomorrow as well and map out, what time I'm going to do each of those tasks on the calendar, plus, whatever else may be in there. And this helps me to kind of have that plan in place of what needs to get done tomorrow, like what's kind of my definition of success and when am I going to do it? And that's a huge one for me, is kind of having my task list exist on my calendar. And I remember kind of growing up, my dad and my mom ran a business as well. They used to run a flower shop, kind of retail flower shop. And my dad would start the day by writing down, the 20 things that he needed to do that day. And then he would just put them in his pocket and walk around and just kind of get to them when he had a chance. And I just remember so often, like at the end of his day, he would have like one of them done. And obviously there's the nature of he ran a retail flower shop, which is just, anyone who's ever done retail, it's crazy all the time. And so everything's happening. And part of your job is just you're present and you're just responding to the living organism that is this business, and you're interacting with it. So, but I kind of, from that, I learned as I became an adult, learned that just having the task list isn't enough. You've got to know like when you're going to do it. Otherwise there's always something else that's more urgent that will get in the way of that task list. So that's a huge one for me, is planning out my day and when I'm going to do those most important tasks. And then for me in the morning, my routine mostly just consists of getting up, usually about an hour and a half before my kids get due. And I'll make some coffee and I just sit down in the kitchen and I kind of write up there with some coffee, and I've got just Ulysses on my iPad, and that's my morning. And then maybe do a little bit of reading as well, and just kind of having that personal kind of down quiet time for myself. And that's usually the most productive time for me. I feel like every minute in the morning is worth, it's worth 2 minutes in the afternoon, and it's worth like 10 minutes in the evening of just how valuable and important and productive that time is for me. So it's very heavily weighted. So I use it on that writing time, because that kind of leads the way for everything else that I do. And then the kids get up and we have breakfast as a family, hang out. And then I'll go off and do a workout, get ready, and then kind of come into my office, usually around 8:30 or 9.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Got some questions in the chat from Jennifer and Bridget. It looks like, do you have a mentor or a person you regularly check in with to help look at some of those big picture values, goals that you're mentioning, how your day-to-day activities are either working towards that or not? And I haven't read this one yet. What tools have you used to get clear about what matters to you and what's important to you?
So as far as mentors, so I have a kind of a mastermind group of folks that I connect with, and we've been getting together every summer. Usually we get together in Colorado. And so there's a group of about 10 folks that are part of that. And I kind of connect with each of them when I have something like specific. So just yesterday, I was kind of feeling a wall against some of our editorial strategy that we've been doing with the Suite Setup and some of our approach with that. And so I called a friend of mine who's knows all about both doing SEO stuff as well as doing audience building and the editorial strategy. And I was like, hey, I'm kind of stuck on these two things. What do you think? And, he just gave me a little bit of feedback. So I sort of have like a group of peers and mentors that I can reach out to. And then as far as like people that I look up to that I'm gleaning from, there's some folks, Saul Orwell, who runs examine.com. I don't know him personally, but I track with basically everything that he shares about how he's building his business and building his website. I think he's doing an amazing job at it. There's a lot of overlap between what he's doing and what we're doing in terms of like strategy and business model. Very different markets. Examine.com is all about supplements and health, and Suite Setup's all about Apple and tech stuff, but some overlap there. So I have some online mentors and people that I sort of like to watch and glean from, and whatever they may share or whatever, I'll take note of it, see what I can apply, and see if I can use that to help me make better decisions going forward. And then as far as the tools that I use to get clear about what matters and what's important to me, how do you get clear on your why? That is a great question, getting clear on your why. So I think there's like multiple layers there, right? We've got the high big picture value of like what is sort of the vision or the values that you carry for your life and what matters to you. And all of us are going to have a different answer to that. Some people are going to value maybe integrity and generosity. Other people are going to value creativity and relationships. And we all value all of those, but when it comes down to it, we're usually going to have one or two sort of like primary guiding values that sort of lead the way and help us with all the decisions that we make about stuff. So getting clear on that and understanding what that really is helps quite a bit. And then using that as sort of a model or a framework or decision-making, backboard for everything else that kind of trickles down from there. So I like to usually have an annual theme, or like understanding what's the one thing that I really want to focus on this year, what really matters to me most this year. And so last year it was related to my finances. The year before that, it was related to my physical health. This year it's been related to growing my business into something that's a little bit more sustainable without requiring my day-to-day input and hands-on in it. And so like knowing like this is sort of like the one big picture. So it was like health, finances, growth, like those were like the words that I've kind of had as like the banner over the last few years. And the way that you get that is just by asking yourself questions and asking yourself like, you know, what seems important to me right now? And what are the things that I'm excited about right now? Or what am I interested in? Or is there like a recurring theme that I'm starting to notice that I've been thinking about, or whatever that may be? And just asking some of those questions. And then what I usually end up with is this huge, massive list of like the 10 or 20 things that are all the most important thing to me right now. And there's like, you know, there's 20 of them. It's like, okay, they can't all be the most important. And so just going like, okay, here's everything that I feel is like the most important. And then starting to just whittle it down and edit and delete until I've actually like done the painful work of identifying this is the one thing that really does matter the most. And it hurts to say no to all the others. But if I try to say yes to all of them, it's actually saying no to all of them. And so choosing that one thing and being clear about that, and then just keeping it top of mind as we go through our work cycles. And so this is something that I enjoy about the sabbaticals and the cycles, is not just that we take the 1 week off, but the bigger thing that's going on for us that's really, really valuable is the 6 weeks of that focused work time. And so us as a team, what we do is we sit down and we say, what is the most important goal, or what is, what can we do in the next 6 weeks that will really move things forward for us as a team, either in building something for the business, fixing something that's broken, working on internal processes, whatever it may be. And we usually pick one or maybe two sort of big goals that we'll have, and we just focus on those for just the 6 weeks at a time. And but the intention of having it finished by the end of the 6 weeks. And so it's wrapped up, that goal has been shipped, it's done, and we can kind of put that away. And now we're like done with that project. And then we review it and then plan again for the next one and what we're going to do next. And having just that clarity of, we got 6 weeks to build and ship this thing, or 6 weeks to build and ship a chunk or a portion of it, or something that would stand on its own, is really helpful. And so that just brings that kind of clarity and that focus for the team. And so we're able to get basically 8 weeks worth of work done in a 6 week period because of the focus that we're choosing to have. And then instead of just doing 6 more weeks of work right after, we actually take the time to breathe, plan, prepare, and then take a little bit of time off and celebrate the fact that, hey, we got 8 weeks worth of done, and we're 8 weeks worth of work done in 6 weeks, and actually celebrating that. So those are kind of some of the things as far as the tools that I actually use to get clear. I mentioned sort of that planner approach that I use of mapping out my most important tasks and scheduling them. We have a digital planner that we sell on the Suite Setup that sort of follows that same path of like, what matters this month, what matters this week, what matters today, and when are you going to get to it? And so that's kind of the framework that I use, is that approach. This is awesome. I love hearing everyone's words.
Yeah, I guess
Carrie's is home. I love that. Like, I know, right? Like for 2020, get some foresight.
Home, yeah, the word home for a 2020 theme is is a good one. You picked well.
It's all of our words.
Everyone, yeah, I was gonna say it's everyone's word, whether you wanted it or not.
Yeah. So to kind of, since we're kind of winding down here, there's one in the chat that I'm going to sort of combine with this too. So you set an intention. I think this is a big thing. I feel like in myself and maybe a lot of folks in the community here, it's not necessarily an issue of not knowing what we want to do, as much as picking one of them and having trust in that thing that you pick. Have you had an experience where you get to week 3 of a sprint, and how do you like maintain confidence in that choice and really work to like keep the procrastitasking, as we call it here, keep that to a minimum while you're staying on course? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's great. So what's cool about 6 weeks is it's long enough to get something done, but not so long that you're going to be in trouble if you do the wrong thing. So it's a short enough time frame that we can say, like, hey, this is the direction we want to go. This is the next project we want to build. And chances are pretty good that we're not like flat out just going to waste 6 weeks of work. And so we usually just trust the process. So this is what we're committing to, and we're going to follow through with that. And usually as we get into it, we're like more and more like realizing, okay, this was the good decision. I don't think we've ever had a cycle where 3 weeks in, we felt like this was a bad idea and we need to change our minds and start working on something else. So that hasn't yet happened. We're usually just, let's ship it and then see how it does, see what we learned from, and then use that to inform the next 6 weeks of what we're going to work on from there. And so maybe afterwards we're like, okay, that didn't perform the way we were hoping, or we didn't get as much done on that as we wish we would have, or as far as we wanted it to be. And then we can say, like, let's revisit it and let's now get it to the next level and spend 6 more weeks working on this and improve it even more, or say, we need to go a different direction. So there's that. And then as far as the procrastinating, that's been the 6 week focused work cycles have basically eliminated the procrastinating, because we as a team will identify what we're going to work on and then we all commit to it. And part of that commitment means that no new ideas, we're not allowed to take on any new ideas during that work cycle. And we're saying, this is what we're working on. Here we go. And, I will have 40 or 50 new ideas during that time that I'm like, oh, we got to do that. Oh, I can't believe we're not doing this. And for me, as the Enneagram 3, as I mentioned earlier, and kind of just more of an idea personality, that's kind of where I'm bent towards. The rest of my team is not quite that way, but I'm always having new ideas. And then when I have the new idea, I feel like this is so important. And like, there's this, it's like, because it's new, it makes it feel like we have to do it right now, or it will, or we've missed out on all the opportunity. And that's just not true. But that's how I feel. And so by having these boundaries that say, hey, like, we're not going to add any new ideas or any new work during this work cycle, like, we've committed to what we're working on, and we're not going to add more to it. Like, our time is full, and we value working reasonable hours. We value taking the evenings off and the weekends off. And then we want to value actually finishing this project by the end of the 6 weeks, so that we have our time to plan and prepare and take the sabbatical. So what happens is, when you have a new idea, you write it up, and it just goes into, in the past, it's gone into Basecamp. We use that. We're switching over to Notion now. But the point being that here's an idea of, I think this would be so cool. And it could be from like a new type of course that we want to create, or maybe a webinar we want to host, or a whole new approach to how we do all of our email marketing and automation, or whatever that may be. Like a whole gamut, all sorts of stuff. And it's like, write it up, get all the details out of your head and let it be there. And what I've learned is that if it's actually a good idea, it can wait 6 weeks. And it does not need to interrupt everything we're doing right now, just because I, as the boss, feel excited about it. And so it has helped give me some restraint and some boundaries. And it has helped the team to not feel like at any given moment, I could shoot an email out that says, everyone stop what you're doing. I had a new idea. Now work on this, but also keep working on the other thing, because that's important too. Like, we don't do that. So that basically, that's the answer to the procrastinating, is it's not allowed.
You learned from your experience being on the receiving end of that environment. And I'm sure many of us have been in that work environment as well. Mm-hmm. Like, I had that exact situation at a nonprofit. Everything that was new and was seemingly a good idea was like urgent, and it makes things really hard. I would love to ask one final kind of thing here around the focus course, since attention is this core theme of the Break the Twitch community and the work we're doing around like owning and loving your attention. So I'm curious, just out of the focus course work that you've done, which I know is a compilation of like 40 books and research and so much stuff that you've done. I'm curious what's like one of the most impactful things from that course, if you don't mind me like just stealing something out of there. I'm sure we'll send people to check it out later, but you know, what's like one of the most effective things that you've seen for people in terms of a change that they've made around their ability to focus, own their attention, and like make a change after going through that material?
That's great. I've got two answers for you. So answer number one is I would say the number one point of feedback that I've heard from people as they go through it, which is basically their shift of their day, which now they'll often see a shift where they go, I now am spending more of my time on the things that actually matter to me. Because like, you know, we got 24 hours in a day, and we are all like, we're spending that, like those hours every day. It's getting spent on something, no matter what, like we are spending it, and it just continues to go. And often we, at least in traditional kind of the way that so many of us grew up and were raised, it was like, we grew up in a home where we were told what to do and where to go. And then we grew up in school, we were told what to do and where to go and when to be there. And then we grew up went to a job where our bosses told us what to do and where to go and when to be there. And we never really learned how to like kind of take our own autonomy for making our own decisions about where I want to go, what I want to do, and where I'm going to spend my time. And so a lot of times we sort of default to these just kind of default behaviors. And so after going through the course, like we kind of shift that around so that you've got clarity about what matters to you, and setting some goals, and then building in those habits and those routines, and helping it set into your schedule so that you're kind of having a little bit more control of your day on the things that matter to you. So that's a huge takeaway that I feel like is the most common point of feedback that we get. And then the thing from the course that I think is the most important for me personally, like one of the things I consider to be the most valuable takeaway is actually the thing we talk about. It's a lesson one of the course. And way worse. Lesson one, first day, it's like, hey, so glad you're here. Here's the assignment that I have for you. And you guys are all welcome to do this assignment too. I'll give it out. Is tonight, before you go to bed, I want you to pick out the outfit that you're going to wear tomorrow. Now, Anthony, I think you basically just got like 500 blue t-shirts, right?
Pretty much.
So it's already good. But the idea is, what is it that you're going to wear tomorrow? I want you to pick that out, like the whole outfit, pick it out, set it out, and have it there waiting. And then tomorrow, when you get up in the morning and you get dressed, that's the outfit that you're putting on, put it on. And there's kind of two, I feel like it paints a picture for two things. And first of all, it paints a picture of what we call personal integrity. And we are very good at making commitments to others and following through with those commitments. We are not very good at making commitments to ourselves and following through with the commitments that we make to ourselves. And that can be related to a side project or a side hustle, personal resolutions, anything that we're committing to a specific thing. And it's, just between us, it's, me and me, I'm committing to whatever it may be. In the moment when it's now time to show up for that commitment, I am very good at coming up with reasons as to why I need to postpone that commitment, whether it be getting up in the morning to write or to exercise, whether it be cleaning an area of my office or cleaning out my email, or whatever the commitment is that I like, this is what I want to do. I'm not super great at following through with it, eating a certain way, whatever. So having the personal integrity it's your internal muscle of commitment, that when you make a commitment to yourself, there is no question in your mind that you will do it. You have that willpower. You have that internal personal integrity, the same way that you would have interrelational integrity with your coworkers, with your friends, with your family, whatever that may be. So setting out your clothes and then getting up in the morning and putting them on, what you did was you made a promise to yourself that this is what I'm going to wear. And then in the morning, you followed through with that promise. And so that's huge. But then there's another thing that this actually helps you with, and it's the idea of helping your future self. And as I was mentioning earlier, if you guys were listening, the 1 minute in the morning being like weighted is like twice to 10 times as valuable as other time during the day, of like, this is such precious time to me. And anything that I can do in the morning to sort of ease my transition into the beginning of the day and getting focused on the work is so valuable, as well as anything I can do to eliminate decisions from my day. And so in the evening, it's like, man, I don't care. Like, there's just grab another t-shirt, my pants or whatever. Like, it's easy to pick out my outfit in the evening because I don't care as much. But for some reason in the morning, it's like, man, what do I feel like wearing today? And there's more emotional turmoil that pulls into it. And so by making the decision ahead of time, I've not only saved myself time in the morning, so I have more time for things that aren't as trivial as picking out my clothes, but I've also saved myself energy. I've saved myself some of my willpower for the day, so I can spend that on more valuable things than picking out my clothes.
Thank you. And just for the record, I have only 8 of this exact same blue t-shirt, not 1,000 or however many you said, only 8.
Only 8.
But that was wonderful. Thank you. We really appreciate you joining us and just sharing your story and being so open and vulnerable and just sharing the process you've gone through with all of this. So I'd love to just put links to things where people can find you as well if they want to find out more. I've already linked to your project list where people can click through and see the different things you've worked on. But if there's a spot where people want to go to find out more just from you, what would that be?
Yeah, I think the project list is probably fine. Just the one from ShawnBlanc.net.
Perfect. Great.
Yep.
And so we'll get that. So thank you again. And I know we're a little over here, so just want to say thanks to everyone for joining. And this will be recorded. If you want to review anything, it'll be up in the member area. And yes, thank you. I'm grateful for your time.
Thank you guys. Such a pleasure to hear from you and get to share with you. So I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Anthony, for hosting.
Awesome.
All
Thank
right.
you.